In this episode, we focus on a part of recovery planning that sounds simple but often determines whether a real response succeeds or collapses into confusion, assigning recovery roles and responsibilities that actually work during disasters. When people imagine disaster recovery, they often picture technical steps, like restoring systems or switching to an alternate location. But those steps only happen smoothly when humans know who is supposed to do what, who is allowed to make decisions, and how work is coordinated across teams. Disasters create stress, incomplete information, competing priorities, and sometimes unavailable staff, which means role clarity becomes even more important than it is on a normal day. A plan that depends on a perfect roster of available experts is fragile because real events disrupt schedules, travel, and communications. The goal is to design roles that are clear, backed up, and tied to practical responsibilities, so the organization can recover even when conditions are messy. We will keep the focus on beginner-friendly concepts, emphasizing how to think about roles in a way that supports fast action without creating unsafe shortcuts. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our Course Companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A useful first step is understanding why roles fail in real disasters, because knowing common failure patterns helps you design around them. One common failure is role overlap, where two groups assume the other group is handling a task, so no one does it until it becomes urgent. Another failure is role conflict, where two people both believe they have authority to decide, leading to contradictory instructions that slow recovery and frustrate staff. A third failure is role isolation, where a key person works independently without coordination, causing hidden dependencies to be missed and creating rework when the rest of the organization catches up. Finally, roles can fail because they are defined in job titles rather than responsibilities, such as saying the network team handles recovery without specifying which actions they own, what their handoffs are, and what verification is required. For beginners, the key idea is that role design should match the way work must flow during an emergency, not the way the org chart looks on a slide. To assign roles effectively, you need a clear picture of the recovery work that must happen, even if you do not list every technical step. Recovery work usually includes coordination, decision-making, communications, technical restoration actions, validation and verification, and documentation of actions taken. Coordination is about keeping everyone aligned on priorities, sequencing, and status. Decision-making is about approving major actions, such as activating recovery procedures, shifting operations, or accepting temporary trade-offs. Communications is about ensuring staff, leadership, and sometimes external stakeholders get consistent updates and clear instructions. Technical restoration is the hands-on work of bringing services back, but validation is the separate work of confirming those services are correct, safe, and ready for use. Documentation matters because in a crisis people forget details, and the record of what was done helps prevent mistakes, supports later learning, and may be needed for audits or legal requirements. A central role in many recovery efforts is an overall recovery coordinator, sometimes called an incident manager in other contexts. But here the key idea is the person responsible for orchestration. This role is not necessarily the most technical person, because coordination requires staying above the details and keeping the whole effort moving. The coordinator tracks priorities, resolves conflicts, manages handoffs, and ensures that teams do not work at cross purposes. During a disaster, the coordinator also helps prevent the response from becoming a collection of separate technical projects. For beginners, think of this role like a conductor of an orchestra. The musicians are experts at their instruments, but without the conductor they may not start together, follow the same tempo, or align their transitions. The coordinator's job is to maintain a shared picture of what is happening and what comes next, which becomes harder as pressure increases. Decision authority must be assigned explicitly because disasters create situations where waiting for approval can delay recovery, but acting without approval can create risk and conflict. A recovery plan should define who can declare that recovery procedures are activated, who can authorize major changes like shifting to alternate operations, and who can accept temporary risk trade-offs. It should also define how decision authority is transferred if the primary decision maker is unavailable. This is sometimes called succession, but beginners can think of it as a backup chain for decision power. Without clear authority, teams may either freeze, waiting for instructions, or they may act independently, creating inconsistent outcomes. A workable plan balances speed and control by making sure the right people can make decisions quickly, and that those decisions are communicated clearly and recorded in a simple way. Technical roles should be aligned to services and dependencies rather than to vague categories, because recovery tasks often map to specific systems and foundational components. For example, there may be a role responsible for identity services, another for core networking, another for data storage, and another for key applications. The exact grouping depends on the organization, but the principle is that each role has a defined scope of responsibility and a clear relationship to the recovery sequence. This helps avoid gaps where a dependency is assumed to be handled by someone else. It also makes it easier to assign backups, because you can identify who has the skills to cover each scope. For beginners, imagine a house after a storm. You would not just say the repair team will fix it, you would assign someone to electricity, someone to water, someone to structural safety, and someone to communications, because each area has different expertise and different dependencies. Verification roles deserve special attention, because during recovery there is a strong temptation to declare success as soon as systems appear to run. A plan that works in real disasters assigns responsibility for verification separately from responsibility for restoration. This reduces mistakes and reduces the chance that someone overlooks a problem because they are eager to finish the task they started. Verification includes confirming service functionality, confirming data integrity, confirming that monitoring and logging are working, and confirming that security conditions are acceptable before users return to normal activity. Verification roles should have clear criteria for what counts as restored, because without criteria, people argue about whether something is good enough. A beginner-friendly way to see this is to think about a repaired bridge. It is not enough that cars can drive across once. You want an inspector to confirm it is safe, stable, and ready for normal traffic. Communications roles are also critical because real disasters involve uncertainty, rumors, and anxiety, and unclear messaging can cause operational harm. Someone must be responsible for producing consistent status updates, coordinating messaging across teams, and ensuring that guidance to users is accurate. This role should work closely with the recovery coordinator and decision authority so messages reflect real priorities and approved actions. Communications should also include internal guidance, like what staff should do differently during degraded operations, and what not to do, such as avoiding changes that could complicate recovery. Beginners sometimes assume communications is optional, but in reality communications is a control that reduces chaos. When people receive clear updates, they make fewer risky assumptions and fewer uncoordinated changes. Communication is not just about reassurance. It is about steering behavior in a safe direction during stressful conditions. Documentation responsibilities might sound boring, but they matter more than people expect, and they often break down first during fast-moving events. A plan that works assigns someone to capture key decisions, timing, actions taken, and verification results. This record supports continuity during shift changes, because real recovery can last long enough that teams rotate and new staff must pick up the work. It also supports later learning and accountability, because the organization needs to understand what happened and why certain choices were made. Documentation can be lightweight, but it must be consistent enough to prevent confusion. For beginners, the key idea is that memory is unreliable during stress, and documentation becomes the shared memory of the recovery effort. Without it, teams repeat work, overlook steps, and struggle to explain outcomes afterward. Now we address a reality that makes role assignment truly practical. People will be unavailable, and plans must assume that. Real disasters can affect commuting, health, family obligations, and communications, so a plan should assign backups for each critical role and should define how roles can be reassigned dynamically. This means you design roles around responsibilities that can be transferred, not around a specific person's hero knowledge. Cross-training and accessible procedures support this, but even without getting into training details, the role structure should include redundancy. It should also avoid putting one person in too many roles, because in a crisis, a single person cannot coordinate, communicate, restore systems, and verify outcomes without burning out or missing details. A workable plan distributes responsibilities so that each role has a realistic workload and clear boundaries. The goal is not to create a huge team, but to create a team shape that can flex when reality changes. Finally, role assignment must account for safe access and control, because recovery often requires privileged actions that could harm systems if misused. Roles should include clarity about who can perform high-risk actions, how those actions are authorized, and how to avoid uncontrolled shortcuts that increase risk. In real disasters, people may feel pressure to share credentials, bypass normal checks, or disable controls to speed recovery. A good role design anticipates that pressure and provides controlled methods to move fast without losing accountability. This might include pre-approved emergency access paths, clear approval rules, and verification checkpoints that prevent dangerous mistakes from becoming permanent. The beginner takeaway is that speed and safety do not have to be opposites if roles are designed to support both. When responsibilities and authority are clear, teams can act quickly while still protecting integrity and trust. Assigning recovery roles and responsibilities that work during real disasters means designing human coordination with the same care you design technical recovery. You identify the types of work that must happen, then assign clear ownership for coordination, decision authority, technical restoration scopes, verification, communications, and documentation. You separate restoration from verification so that success is proven rather than assumed, and you define criteria that prevent arguments about what restored really means. You build redundancy through backups and transferable responsibilities, because real events disrupt staffing and communications. You also define safe control of high-risk actions so the recovery effort does not create new security problems while trying to solve the original disruption. When roles are clear, backed up, and aligned with how recovery actually unfolds, the organization recovers faster, with less conflict, and with far more confidence that the restored environment is truly ready to operate.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.